Welcome to the TV Heartbeat podcast with me, Lee Jones. From 1992 until 2010, it was one of the most popular shows on TV, attracting up to 18 million viewers, and it is still popular today. With plenty of drama, heartbreak and comedy, Heartbeat had it all, especially when you throw in the 1960s music, the beautiful Yorkshire scenery and the classic cars. Think of this as a virtual Aidensfield Arms, and we're sat in the snug to talk all things Heartbeat. So grab yourself a baby sham with a cherry and make yourself comfortable. Today we are joined by the actor David Lonsdale, who played David Stockwell. David Stockwell was originally introduced in Series 3 as a one-off character, but from Series 5 he started a phased return in becoming a series regular. He was the sidekick to Claude, to Mr. Vernon, to Peggy and to Bernie. He had a heart of gold, but he often found himself in a bit of a pickle, which was not always his fault. He was very upset when Claude left. He was shocked when Mr. Vernon died, and he was even more shocked when he came back. And he had a big crush on Gina in the pub. I'm very pleased today to be talking to our fifth longest serving cast member, David Lonsdale, who played David Stockwell.
David, was I really the fifth longest serving cast member?
You were,
Have you worked that out?
I have, yeah.
I had no idea.
So, the first question I've got for you really is how did you get the part, and how did that come about for you?
Right, so the way I got the part was, as you've just pointed out, it was a one-off. And so I was, the character breakdown said, a simple, country-loving, naive young man who lived in the forest. And, a lot of the fans will remember the Badger episode. And so that was my first episode, and that's what it was. And I turned up on the day trying to act naive and country-loving. And the late great Bill Maynard said, "Oh, right, you played the idiot then," and that was it. I did that one, and then 2 years later they came across another character, different name, in a different script, who had very similar traits. And one of the director who had directed that one, who had directed the previous one, said, "Hang on, we've had this character here before. Let's change the name. We'll get that guy back." So it was a pure fluke, basically. Wow. They had two similar characters who were written in, and they just decided to get me back. And one of the reasons that I was given the job in the first place was that everybody else who auditioned, when they were playing a slightly simple person, spoke very slowly. And I was the only one. I asked the director again, it was Tim Dowd, and I asked him as why he gave me the job. He says, "Well, we interviewed about 20 idiots, and you spoke the quickest." So I was the fastest speaking idiot. That's why I got the job.
Do you know anyone else who you were up against?
I don't know. If I did, I can't remember. It's so long ago now. It was 1993. I think so. I don't think so, but the acting community in London is large, but not so large. You tend to recognise somebody, but I don't remember who I was up against. No. It'd be some other devilishly good-looking guy, obviously. But
of course. But
of course,
slower speakers.
Slower speakers.
Yeah. Did you have any reservations about taking on the part at all, or did you find it instantly appealing?
No, I mean the fact is that increasingly now actors are not allowed to take on two personalities or who are too different to themselves. I mean, you largely do play yourself, because if they want if they want a Welsh speaker or a Welsh accent, they'll get a proper Welsh actor. They don't need to get English people to do the accents and stuff like that. And it's always been the same. So it was a great treat to play someone who's very different to me. And so that was a great treat. And then when it came back, it was great. And then the scripts just started arriving through the door, even though I didn't have a contract in those days. And so I kind of fell into it by default. It was a rather strange process. And then after about 4 years, they decided to give me a regular contract in the late 90s.
Yeah, it's quite a slow process, isn't it?
It was just, I don't think they ever had any intention of giving me a regular job. It was just strange. Back in the early days, Bill Maynard's character Greengrass was very much a loner, and they discovered that he was talking to his dog Alfred an awful lot. And so that's the way they got the stories over, where he's talking to his dog. And of course, the dog didn't talk back. So I think I was written in as a replacement for the dog, who occasionally talked back. So there you go.
And then he became a bit of a threesome, for the one for a better word.
Well, for want of a better word, yes, it was. It was more than a threesome, because we obviously the Alfreds, who many people have great affection for, they were replaced, and so we had three theoretically identical dogs who took over, because Tramp, who was the first one, was quite old when he or she started work. I imagine, and started shivering when we were out in the weather. You know what the weather's like up in North Yorkshire, and started shivering, and so we had to replace Tramp. Because Tramp wasn't enjoying the job anymore, it looked like it. And so then we got, was it Rosie? I made that up. Boots.
Yeah, I think it was Rosie and Boots.
I think it's Rosie. And Rosie was much bigger, but nobody seemed to notice. Rosie was a good 50% bigger than Tramp, but nobody really noticed that. And then we had Boots. And they were all fine. They're all prima donnas like the rest of the cast.
Yeah. that Tramp, though, was amazing. He had the best screen presence, didn't he?
Tramp was everybody's favourite, and because the show was new, we had a lot more time in the early series to film. It is just the way that TV tends to work, is that as the series gets more longer in the tooth, shall we say, then they tend to constrict the budgets and that sort of stuff. You tend to have to work faster. In those early series, there was a lot more space, and that enabled them to use the animals much better. Yes, but Tramp was a beautiful dog, and as you say, had that great mournful expression, and it was incredibly well trained as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. Do you remember meeting everybody for the first time, or the other cast members and everyone?
I remember, obviously, I said about Bill Maynard when he wandered over and said, "Oh, you're playing the idiot, are you?" The others, I can't say, it's a long time ago. I remember the first read through, and I was very surprised that I had to drive all the way up to London to read the script, and then I think I drove all the way back again, because I don't think I was used on the first few days, and that was quite a novel experience for me. So I was probably quite overwhelmed. I have to say, I didn't watch the program religiously because I had a young family, and I had tuned in, but I tuned in largely because I knew I had the audition coming up, and so I wasn't starstruck in that respect, but I remember being slightly overwhelmed by the number of faces I recognised.
Yes, and at that time, it was really, like, Series 3 was almost at the peak of its popularity, I would think, as well.
I think now then,
days.
it was doing incredible. Obviously, back in the days when Nick Berry was firing on all cylinders, and I think about 2 or 3 years later, we did an episode when Greengrass got stuck on a bomb for some reason. You know, these things happen in North Yorkshire all the time. He was digging the foundations, so I got stuck on a bomb, and there was a whole thing, like you can imagine. And I think that was had the highest viewing figures. So yes, it was between series 3, 4, and maybe towards the end of the decade. So maybe 6, 7 years.
So the bomb was Series 5. So that would have been your earliest ones as well.
Well, I did they filmed Series 2 and 3 together, and I was in the Series 3 bit of it. And then I took a year when I didn't hear back, and I thought, well, that was just a job. Then the year after that, it was Neve Kuzak's death episode, when she died, an incredible episode. And I was brought back for that. And then about 2 months later, we filmed The Bomb. So I think that would be when Neve Kuzak left. If that was Series 5, then right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So were you
surprised?
Sorry.
I'd say you know your stuff.
Well, I tried. Yeah, it was. It was a few. It would have been a few after Neve had gone. Were you surprised to be called back?
I was the first time, yes, because actors they get a job. It's a guest artist role in a program, and there is absolutely no indication that you'll ever come back again. We had hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of guest artists in Heartbeat, many of whom came back as different characters 4 or 5 years later. And some of whom came back as the same character, and some of whom became semi-regulars, but you'd never go into that assuming you were going to be invited back. No.
Yeah. Right. I think it's only you and Anne Stallybrass who were one-off characters and came back as full-time regulars.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Again, you know more about this stuff than I do in that case. No, it was definitely, it was a happy accident of fate that I came back.
So how about David? Were you sort of given any sort of guidance on how to play him, or did you have any free reign? Or
So my father-in-law has just started watching all the repeats on television, and when it's out on repeat, they come thick and fast, and so he can spot over a period of a few months how the character developed and changed, and certainly the character as he appeared in the very first episode would have been pretty useless as a regular, because he was too shy to go in the pub. He couldn't talk to strangers. He suffered from terrible anxiety, and so he probably would have just gone hidden in the woods, which, as you say, is a regular in an ongoing drama series. Is not terribly useful having a character who just hides in a bush all the time. So it varied. One of the joys of Heartbeat was that the stories were complete within themselves, and they altered week to week, and that's good for the viewing public. But they relied very heavily on the writers having the same idea all the way through the series, and so there were changes, and sometimes they. David in one episode would say, that he couldn't read, and then a couple of episodes later he'd be writing a poem, and so there were anomalies, shall we say?
What's that poetic license they call that? I think.
Is that what they call it?
So.
That's what's. Listen, Lee, that's one of the words I would have called it. Yes.
Yeah. And one of his most obvious mannerisms was the hat.
Yeah.
Was that you or?
That was me. The hat was given to me. I think I had 3 hats. I think I have the 3rd hat. The other 2 were stolen at public appearances, like the car rally, for example, that they have in that. And people come, and it happened in Preston, I think, and one was robbed. Yeah, the hat. The first one literally fell apart. It was patched, and so they then had to have them made. But yeah, that was just, we decided very early on, or I decided very early on, that David was painfully polite, and that he would, out of choice, wear his hat all the time, but never in the presence of a lady.
No, he always took it off.
Or in the presence of authority figures. David was obviously very impressed by authority in a way that Greengrass and Vernon and Peggy were not. He was impressed. He understood and respected authority. So the hat came on an awful lot. In a program, but with a load of doctors and policemen in, and the hat came on an awful lot, I can tell you.
Do you have any sort of what are your most memorable moments playing David? Any particular?
Oh, jeez. How many did I do? Could you tell me? 300 and all time, though. 320.
Oh, that's here somewhere.
Have you? 320.
That was one of my questions I'm going to ask you at the end, actually. It's not quite.
How many did I do? Will you always count them? I don't know.
259.
259. Okay. There you go. That's it is a lot. It's a lot. Memorable moments. So many. One of my favourite episodes was, I think it was called Bread and Circuses, I think, but we had a load of circus animals wandering around the village, and one of the treats and my memories of it is that I got to handle and work with a lot of animals and a lot of classic cars, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a minute. But the animals were a huge treat. I mean, I started listing them at one point, so everything from rats to moles to to zebras, and I think we had a llama, and all sorts of dogs and snakes and birds and all sorts of stuff, piglets. And this bread and circuses, we had a load of circus animals who escaped in the village, and I remember thoroughly enjoying that. I remember doing a scene with Bill Maynard. Bill had, Greengrass, shall we say, had great big clumpy boots, and we were driving the Morris commercial van, and he insisted on driving it, even when he was probably at a stage of life and health where he should not have been driving it, but he insisted on driving it because it was Greengrass's truck. And so I'd sit there and cross my fingers because we had no seatbelts, obviously. And we're batting down a hill, and there's a hairpin bend at the bottom and a ford at the bottom of this hill. And he had his foot on the accelerator, and the lip of his boots got stuck underneath the brake, or what's the word? So he couldn't get his foot off the accelerator. Whatever the pedal in the middle is, it is the brake, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
and I can't do it. I'm not in the car. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. And so he had his foot on the accelerator, and he mumbled something about, "I can't get my foot off the accelerator." And so we went down that hill as fast as the Morris commercial does, and we went round the bend on two wheels. That's one of my main memories.
Oh, is that on film as well somewhere?
I doubt they used it because I think the camera was inside, because I remember they couldn't reuse it because he was probably said a rude word when he couldn't get his foot off the accelerator. So. Another one actually drove a traction engine, which was a treat because they don't have brakes, and that was quite scary. So I was trained up on traction engines as well, because they work like steam engines. You have to put them in reverse and let them slow their own way.
And you had a tank.
Lots of memories.
Point.
Say again.
You had a tank at one point, and you demolished
tank. Now then, the tank was remarkably easy to drive because I was expecting levers and all that stuff, but it actually had been adapted, or was a perfectly normal setup inside. So it was, I think it was probably an armoured personnel character or something like that, but it certainly was just drove like a normal car. So that wasn't a problem. But there are lots of other things I have driven. Now, strangely, I always think of myself as being quite coordinated, but there was an episode with mods in when all the scooter boys came into town, and I ended up having to ride a little Vespa or whatever it was, a little Lambretta, and that I did have trouble with. I can't quite do the coordination with the clutch, having the hand clutch thing. Yeah. So that was more of a problem than any of the others.
I'd forgotten about that one, actually.
It was a weird one. As a scam as usual, but I think the local chapter of the Sealed Knot were going to do a recreation of some Civil War battle, and Vernon or Greengrass, whoever it was told to get an opposition to fight them. And so there was all these guys in Roundhead outfits waiting for the battle. And then Greengrass managed to get the local chapter of the Hells Angels, the local mods chapter, whatever. They came up with their bike chains. and there was this huge punch-up between a load of mods with bike chains and baseball bats, and the sealed knot. It's a very funny episode.
And another funny one was Enoch.
Now, Enoch, I loved Enoch, and I didn't realise how well that episode went down. I found Enoch, I just got that, and I love watching back. I love watching back the episodes. Yeah. But he wasn't written in a lot, but the Enoch stuff, I very much wanted to give him a life of his own, and it kind of came over that Enoch was almost controlling me after a while, and I would have adored to have explored that storyline more. But yes, I Enoch, bless him.
Really funny, and I was surprised to see him back for the second time, but I think that was even funnier than the first.
And then he got run. Did he get run over or something?
He got run over in the first time he appeared. Then he came back, but he was. I think because Vernon had run him over, he was quite annoyed with Vernon.
Oh yes, he would be,
wasn't he? Yeah.
That's what that was really lovely. There was one scene which I think I can't remember. I was sitting outside on a deck chair for some reason, and I was asleep. And I wanted Enoch to wake me up so that the audience would go, hang on, what's going on here? So I kind of like dozed off, and then I got Enoch to see the police car approaching, and then I got Enoch to turn to me and say something, and then I woke up. And I think it was probably just a little bit out there for Heartbeat. I have to say I'm not sure it was used.
Oh, that would have been great. Let me think some other moments. You got covered in a lot of stuff. I remember some batter in the chip van.
Covered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fruit explosion when Peggy arrived.
Yeah, and probably a lot of unpleasant other stuff. Certainly clay in a clay mine I got covered in.
Lots of mud.
Yes. The worst one of these, which you haven't mentioned, because it wasn't very spectacular, was a gatto. I think there was a gatto in the car.
Yes, and Christmas one that was, isn't it?
And there's this gatto. I had to fall into the gatto, and you work on the assumption that 99% of the time the props people make these things, but they're not real. This was real, and it was a real cake because he went out and bought one. And trouble was there was continuity. So once I had fallen into the cake, I had to leave the cream where it was and the jam and all this sort of stuff for an hour or so until we were ready to do the next scene of continuity, which is inside. And it was a warm day, I remember. It was always a warm day when we filmed the Christmas episodes. Yeah. Goodness knows how that happened. But I remember stinking of rancid cream for days afterwards. I just couldn't get it out of my hair and my ears and my nose and everywhere. Yes. If the writers couldn't think of anything, and I don't know, let's just cover David in a load of stuff. That'll work.
He doesn't mind.
Well, yeah, he doesn't mind. He's paid.
Yeah,
he's paid for.
The TV Heartbeat Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at TV Heartbeat, Instagram TV.Heartbeat, Facebook The Heartbeat Vehicle Owners Group, and TikTok Heartbeat TV. This is where you'll find the best Heartbeat content and news.
A couple of sort of more poignant moments for David. His poem to Alfred.
Poem for Alfred.
That was quite nice.
Yes, it was. It was been out. This is one I read in the pub, or did I?
Yes, right. That's right. So, in front of all the other cast members as well. It looked like quite a full scene with all the.
That's
regulars.
Right. That's right. I read that in the pub. I have a feeling I might have written it up on the moors and then read it out. Right. Again, this is weather related, that they had to surround me. That was probably the middle of January, and it was blowing a hoolie, and the ice was coming down sideways, and David was meant to be sitting on a bench in the middle of nowhere just writing a poem. And it was shocking weather. So I remember they corralled me in with all the wagons to get rid of the wind and some of the rain, and try and make it look like I would have sat out there for fun. The poem, yes, it was a lovely poem. Again, it was very nicely written because it was very simple. It was very naive, and just occasionally. Things like that don't quite work out, and especially if you get people like I saw examples of my handwriting once, which had always been written by the art department, and you think, well, David would never write that well. But that poem was I remember really, really well written. There are lots and lots of poignant moments, especially when the doggies, when Alfred died, because that was having to be a big moment, because the audience loved the dog so much.
Huge moment. And you sang in Gina and Phil's wedding. What was that like?
That was, again, the director came over. That was a whole weird episode anyway. I'm sure you're aware that we'd ordered in tens of thousands or thousands and thousands of pounds worth of fake snow because it was meant to be a winter wedding. Yeah. And on the day we were going to film the wedding, we all got up and it had snowed. Wow, so the snow and it does snow in Gothland, but the number of days it was actually lying on the ground when we were filming were very few, lined all the way for the whole days. And of course, we'd always done all these snow machines and stuff like that, and woke up in the morning and the moors were covered in snow. So it was a freaky day anyway. But I remember going and I just sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I think the director thought I wasn't going to sing it properly. He probably thought I was going to not ham it up, but because Dave was so much of a comedy character, that he probably wouldn't have sung it straight as such. So I just went and sang it, because despite people thinking that David was just the comedy subplot and that sort of stuff, he actually, that, like you say, was in a lot of the more poignant moments as well.
Yeah, there's a lot more substance to him, really, wasn't there?
We tried. Again, that was very dependent on the scripts. Occasionally, you'd get lines which were just comedy, stupid lines, and I'd try and avoid those, underplay them as much, or work against him as much as I can, just so he was believable as a character. And I think largely that worked, which is probably why he was in it for so long. To be honest,
were there many lines or storylines that you were given that you sort of really thought this doesn't work?
Just the ones when he was too stupid, which were just sometimes that the writing generally on Heartbeat was very good, and you say they wrote so many of them, it must have been really tough. But sometimes if they just fell back on just making David incredibly stupid and two-dimensional in that respect, then they were the ones which were more problematic for me. But it was never so much that we couldn't get around it. I mean, it's just every now and then. Luckily, especially working with Bill Maynard, we had a certain amount of leeway to rewrite, to alter slightly. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard the story about Bill. I used to stay at the Inn on the Moor in Goathland, and most of the rest of the actors stayed at the other hotel, the Mallean Spout. And I booked into the Inn on the Moor the first time, and then 2 years later, I thought, well, I'll just go back to the Inn on the Moor. And by that point, all the other actors had moved hotel; they'd all gone to the other place, and. But I still stayed there because basically it was the only way I could find out what my lines were for the day, because Bill Maynard stayed there. And so literally, I know it sounds like I make it up. Literally in the mornings, we used to meet up either in breakfast downstairs or waiting for our car. And he goes, you get the script, you go, right, we're not doing that rubbish. And he'd toss the script away and he'd go, right, I'm going to say this, you're going to say that, I'll say this, and then you say that. And that was it. And we used to go down to set, and the poor director, whoever it was, would listen to Bill, who'd come down and say, right, we're not doing any of that rubbish, we're not doing it like that. And then some directors argued and some didn't, but he normally got his own way, shall we say.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Stayed in the inn for a long time because Bill was always there.
Do you think for the majority of the times then the changes were for the better?
The changes of who?
Bill's changes.
Right. Yes, but I'm going to qualify that. Yes, because if Bill was forced to say lines that he didn't want to say, then that would be an issue. And there's one thing you can't do as an actor. If you do get cross, it's hard to hide it in your eyes. I mean, it's hard to look nice and relaxed. And Bill Ryder, generally, Bill did his own stuff better than a lot of the lines which were written in as being supposedly funny. And he had a dislike of people writing in funnies for him. And you can kind of understand it. The guy was very, very clever.
Yeah, he's a comic, isn't he?
Well, he was. As he pointed out on numerous occasions, Timmy. He was the highest paid comedian in the country for a couple of years in the late 50s. He was known as the Sweater Boy, and he was a proper, whatever the equivalent of stand-up comedian was then. But he knew his own character. He was a very good actor. He was a very good writer, and he's very funny. And he was quite difficult to work with. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why I kept the job so long. I've said this multiple times, that I was probably one of the few people who could work with Bill Maynard without strangling him halfway through the day. And I think as a sort of like a thank you, they kept me writing me in. But he was very good, and the proof of the pudding and all that. I probably still, I would guess, the most popular character that if you asked now, then he would probably be well up there as one of the most popular characters, if not the most popular character.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think he's certainly one of them, if not the most popular.
Yeah.
So, but did you enjoy working with him, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I enjoyed it. He was a perfectionist. He wouldn't let anything go. So the work with Bill was very good, and he demanded that he had his time. If something was wrong, he demanded that we did it again. And the fact that the script was not just learnt, it was very carefully combed before we did it. Yeah. And he did that every night before we turned up. And the two characters just worked together. Yeah. And he reluctantly accepted me as a replacement for the dog, and the rest is history, as they say.
What was it like then when sort of Bill he retired because he was ill health, wasn't it?
He was ill. It was a difficult time because he wanted to come back, but he had a stroke, and they did invite him back, and they did some work with him. Which they filmed, and they just felt that the twinkle had gone, and there was an element of sadness about that. Bill was a very proud, very talented, and very popular character man, and he wanted to come back. Now they wrote him into the Royal, which was the sister spin-off show. And he did very, very well in there, but they felt that what Greengrass had done over the years was gone. Yeah. And the only possible return he could have had would have been if they'd used him in scenes in the Edensfield Arms, which they could have done. They could have propped him up in a chair in the Edensfield Arms, and he could have sat there. And do you know what? Of all the ways that the stroke did affect him, it didn't affect his mouth one bit. It never slowed down once, and so he could have carried on. That was tricky because they brought in Jeff Hughes, and it was a bit eggy because Jeff's very, very different. Yeah, the character's very different, much more urban and much So that was a tricky transition. We didn't know how it was work, but it seemed to work out very well.
And it happened quite quickly. I think Bill's last one was a Christmas episode, and I think the next one then Jeffrey Hughes came in.
They did. It was very quick. They made the decision. I don't know if they had Jeff in their back pocket for a while. We used to hear every now and then. We used to hear of actors who had said, "You know what? When Maynard goes, I wouldn't mind having a go at that." One of whom, whether this is true or not, I cannot say, but one of whom was Norman Wisdom. Really? And apparently I was told one day on set by what casting or producers, whoever it was, that Norman Wisdom had approached the show saying, bear me in mind, or his age, bear me in mind if ever you looking for a replacement, because I would love to do that. Very strange. Yeah. Imagine working with Norman Wisdom.
Did you enjoy working with Jeff?
Yes, very much. Jeff, he was a shock when he turned up because he was so different. But again, we stayed in the same hotel in Leeds for quite a while, and we got to know each other, and over the weeks. And Jeff had a very different way of working, and it was quite a shock after working with Bill. But I'm glad that it was very different. we ended up in the garage a lot more, and we went. I mean, Jeff's clothes were different. We didn't go out poaching and fishing and creeping around in the night all the time, and that worked because it felt much less like we were trying to replace Bill, which I think would have been impossible. But we had this much more urban wheeler dealer who turned up, and I have to say I thought a lot of those episodes, I thoroughly enjoyed in the early noughties.
And then, obviously, when Jeff moved on, it was Gwen Taylor as Auntie Peg.
Yeah, to try and work out how many more I was going to get through before. Yeah, Auntie Peggy and Gwen, a beautiful woman, turned up, and of course she looked far too well kept.
Yeah.
But if you ever meet her out of costume, her hair is perfect, and she has wonderful teeth.
Yes.
And of course, she turned up, and they said, "Well, you can't have those because you look like you look like you've got wonderful teeth, like you've had a good life." And so, but she could, I don't know if I don't have any sort of like worry about my teeth. You could put whatever. They couldn't cover them in oil or muck or that sort of stuff because they looked wrong. So they came up with this idea of dentures.
Oh, nice.
And which is why, and they were huge. And they defined Aunt Peggy for quite a while. As she got used to these silly dentures that they gave her, but being the actress that she is, she grew into them, and they became part of her, covering up her lovely pearly teeth. And incredible. I adore Gwen Taylor.
Yes.
And I haven't seen her for absolute years. I think she's in EastEnders now, isn't she?
Yeah.
And but what a career! What a woman! I remember her way back from what was the holiday thing that she used to do. Duty Free.
Yeah.
My God, you're older than you look. Duty Free. I remember her from all those years ago, and of course she's had so many reinventions of herself over the years.
I don't think people realise what a big star she was, or what a big star she is.
No, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah. She was a big star back in the Duty Free. I imagine was the 70s. I would guess Duty Free was in the 70s. Yeah, she just keeps working. I think when she finished with Heartbeat, I think she ended up doing a theatre tour straight away. And, for somebody of advancing years, if I can use that expression, she still has the fire and the hunger and the ambition to keep going. And she's still turning up and giving a great value for... great value for money.
And a brilliant character, I think Peggy was. Really funny.
She was really cross because they gave her the army greatcoat to wear. And she had not been aware that Greengrass used to wear one.
Right.
And they had that great big green overcoat that she used to wear. And I don't think she was terribly happy when she realised that she was wearing one of Greengrass's signature costume items. Then I think that was a little bit of a problem. But she pulled it off.
Yeah,
she pulled it off. Yeah, so again, some wonderful, wonderful episodes. And it's nice having somebody who cared for David as well. I mean, the guys did, but she was much more maternal and in that respect.
Yeah, I think she did give him a bit of a tough time at times, didn't she? But she did care.
They all did, yeah. But she wouldn't have let him. She wouldn't have let him be hurt.
No. And another, one of my favourite pairings with David was Bernie Scripps as Peter.
Peter, yeah. Peter and I shared a caravan as our changing room, and we shared that caravan donkey's years. We spent so many hours waiting between takes and waiting for rainstorms to finish and waiting for this, that, and the other to happen. We got to know each other incredibly well, and we just sat there. We must have sat there talking rubbish to each other for hundreds and hundreds of hours, and that really, really works on screen. Because David and Bernie have probably spent their entire lives together, and And Peter had that great lugubrious face. He was just he was incapable of turning in a bad performance. That's all I can say about him. Again, a man who, before, in a previous life, was doing the Shakespeare's on TV and has had a fantastic and varied career. But he absolutely nailed Bernie, and he used to walk on and do virtually nothing. But the interaction in the characters was great because we were bored. The characters, Bernie and David, he was just generally bored and exasperated with David. And that's great because having shared a caravan for so many years, he was probably bored and exasperated with me as well. So that we just used to go out and just film it. It was an absolute joy.
Yeah.
He used to call himself Mr. High Maintenance because he used to send people off for pots of tea and things like that. But he was what a lovely gentleman he was.
I was lucky enough to meet him a few years ago, and that was and we kept in touch. So
lovely.
We met him. I met him in Spain of all places, which is really bizarre.
Well, yes, he is a regular visitor. I can't remember. I think he may have had a flat down there or something, apartment down there. But yes, he used to disappear off every now and then. He used to come back with long. We had a break once a year for about 6 weeks or something. We used to come out 6 weeks, 2 months off. And of course, all the actors would, thank goodness for that, let's escape the weather. And they used to go to Spain and we'd come back with horrendous suntans and long hair.
Yeah.
And Peter used to come back. He used to let his hair grow, and Derek Folds was the same. They used to just come back looking like terrible theatrical laddies with their suntans and their flowing locks. Yes, he was a lovely man. I miss him terribly.
What was it like working with Derek?
Derek and I, strangely, Derek and Trish, they obviously work in the pub.
Yeah.
And so we used to get the shooting schedule through. And I don't know if people are aware, but the way that television is done, it's very location driven. So all the scenes that take place in one location are filmed on one day. And as far as you're able. So Derek and Trish used to do all their scenes in the pub, the majority of their scenes in the pub. So quite often they would turn up for read-through. They would do their scenes all in the pub. Then they would disappear. We wouldn't see them again for the next 2 weeks while the rest of us were sludging through mud in North Yorkshire. And then they'd come back for the following read-through, cash their checks and get on with it. No. Fantastic. Again, a fantastic actor, a fantastic star, a very funny man, again, as indeed all those guys were. But I never had the pleasure of working with Derek because he almost always was involved in the main storyline as the pub was required. And I almost always was in the subplot. And so they very rarely let me play with the proper actors, in the main story. All the posh guys, very very rarely used to get the main storyline with them. But I used to get a few hours with Derek every week. But again, I didn't see him, didn't work with him as often as most of the other characters.
Another one that I'd like to mention is Vanessa, because she joined you all in the garage, and I thought she was a really nice addition as Rosie.
Rosie, now then, I believe she's beginning to. She's going to make an appearance in a well-known soap opera.
Yeah,
I think she's starting Coronation Street or something.
I think it went out this week.
I think it did. So I am allowed to say it.
Yes,
in that case.
Yeah, it's not a secret. She's
Who is she? Oh, I don't know what she is.
I haven't watched it for a long time, so I don't know what she is. I won't tell her.
Vanessa, hey, she's yes, lovely. She stayed and she made the decision that she wanted to go. Otherwise, she would have stuck around for years and years and years. A breath of fresh air. It was really nice because you got to like me, Geoffrey Hughes, Peter Benson sludging around the garage, and then all of a sudden this bright, effervescent young blonde girl turns up, and she obviously there were people made connections between her and Kylie Minogue in Neighbours, because Kylie, what was her character in Neighbours?
Charlene.
Oh, Charlene, you really need to get out more, Lee.
I know I do. I'm a big Kylie fan, so.
Oh dear, never mind. So obviously, Charlene was sort of like the bright, effervescent young blonde girl who appeared from underneath the car. And I think they did the same thing with Vanessa. They sort of like stuck her in a car and they wheeled out. And everyone, oh my goodness, it's a woman. Oh, we can't have any of this sort of stuff. And then she managed to, as things progressed, she managed to move into all sorts of other areas of the show. So again, she started off in a very much in the subplot, but then ended up sort of like muscling in on other areas of the show. Again, a lovely actress,
Yeah, a nice part of the team in the garage as well.
Very nice, and again, it just added a different dynamic, a different dynamic. One thing that Heartbeat did, I felt always very well, was casting, and they would cast everything very carefully. The actors, the regular cast, always made the guest artists feel very welcome.
Yeah,
and so it kind of worked. It kind of made everything very relaxed and let people felt they were able to express themselves and not be too nervous and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was, and so they did cast very well. One little footnote about casting is that one thing we were not allowed to say at the time, but I will, announce now, is that for many, many, many years there were no Yorkshire actors in the show. Right. But there were a lot from our side of the Pennines. Yeah. Now then, so we weren't really allowed to discuss that because obviously it was Yorkshire Television's flagship program for a long time. But obviously Mark Jordan and Tricia Penrose and me and Bernie Scripps and a lot of the came from the Manchester side of the Pennines. Wow. There you go. I've said it now. Yeah. And of course Geoffrey Hughes, who came from our side of the Pennines as well. Yeah.
I'm going to move on now to some of the vehicles. We've touched upon some of them.
Yes. Now, I have warned you about this, haven't I?
We had to discuss one at the car rally. So it was the taxi. It was the slowest vehicle.
And I got it wrong.
You got it mixed up with Peggy's.
I got it picked up with Vauxhall Wyvern. Now, Vauxhall Wyvern was not the taxi, was it?
Yeah, that was the taxi.
That was the taxi.
Yeah, it was the
right.
Austin,
In that case,
the Austin Goodwood was Peggy's, which was at the show, which you gave
part
of the show to.
So the taxi was the Wyvern.
Yes,
and is that the one that I said was slow?
Well, he first of all said it was Peggy's car that was slow.
Right, it's not the Goodwood. Right, thank goodness that's being cleared up. I'm sure all the listeners have turned off by now. But the taxi, the Vauxhall Wyvern, was the most, considering it was meant to be a taxi, we often had 4 people in there, was the most underpowered vehicle going up even the slightest incline.
Yeah.
And we literally, if we had to appear over the brow of a hill, they would shout on the radio, action, and I would put my foot down on the accelerator and we'd creep forward at a painfully slow pace, jumping the car, trying to get it to go up the flipping hill. And they shout, David, action. I say, I am actioning. Where are you? I said, we're still trying to get up the flipping hill. Yes, I didn't appreciate that car. I'm sure that whoever owns it will love it dearly.
Well, it's disappeared. I've been trying to track that one down, but it was sold off at auction at the end, but it hasn't been seen since.
Oh, what a tragedy. What a tragedy.
So, yeah. But it's still on its way back from the auction.
Oh, dear me.
And you had to go at the hearse, didn't you?
The hearse? Oh, did I tell you? But now then, when the guy, Big Arthur, I can't remember his second name, who owned a lot of the vehicles. Yeah. Arthur, he lives up in the northeast somewhere, and he owned the red truck. And then he built up the Greengrass's truck.
Yeah.
Now then, he paid me one of the biggest compliments that I've ever been paid as an actor. And that was when Bill Maynard drove that truck, he got through about 4 clutches.
Wow.
And then when I drove the truck, none. Oh. He didn't have to replace the clutch. So I think that was a great one. This is probably because Bill Maynard, like they did in the old days, used to ride the clutch all the time. So he never got his big boot off it.
Not surprised. And I think you got to drive Vernon's Bentley at one point when he came into money.
Really?
Yeah,
Can't remember
I think
that.
you were his chauffeur at some point.
I remember the hearse. Oh, I'm probably, yes. I think I do remember driving the Bentley. I remember driving the hearse. You mentioned that before. Yeah, I drove the hearse quite a lot. I rode a lot of horse and carriages as well for some reason. I don't know why there were so many horses and carriages around in the 1960s, but there do appear to be.
Yeah.
Yes, the hearse generally beautifully maintained. We had regular suppliers. They became part of the crew. The car crew really became part of the family, and and if the cars worked over and over again, then they were welcomed back with open arms. But as you can imagine, cars that are 40, 50, 60 years old occasionally get temperamental. And but generally, incredibly well maintained and professional group.
And a really
Car
important
owners.
part of the show as well.
Well, a very important part of the show, along with the music,
Yeah.
the cars. But when people say, "Oh, we love Heartbeat," oh yeah, they don't ever say, "Oh, we like you. We thought you're great." All they say is, "Oh yeah, I love," especially blokes. So we say, "Oh well, we love the music, and we love the cars, and we love the countryside." And then they go, "Oh, we love Gina's miniskirt." And it would always be, and then the rest of the action and the story would be well down the list.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, costume wise, I mean, you had a few great costumes in your time, and one that makes me laugh is a chef's hat at one point.
Really? Now the chef's hat.
You're in a bit of a chase, aren't you? And there's this one scene that cracks me up every time I see it.
We're in a burger van.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had. I do remember this. I think there was a burger van chase. Now,
Yeah, that's it.
I think there's a story about this. I think it was Peggy was in the back of the burger van, and it was the slowest car chase probably ever in history, because I was driving a burger van with Aunt Peggy in the back of the burger van, rolling around with no sort of restraint whatsoever. I don't know who the stunt director on that was, but they'd been shooting. And behind us, I think we were being pursued by the Doctor, and then I think PC Younger overtook us in the little panda car or the little minivan or something. And it was an incredibly narrow road with ditches on both sides. It was quite a scary and dangerous moment, even though it just looks like a really stupid, slow heartbeat comedy chase. It was quite tricky to do, I have to say.
Well, in the chase, it was actually the hearse that was behind you.
Ah, yes.
And a bubble car.
I remember it now, yes.
And then one of the policemen in the panda.
And they had to overtake us all and then pull us in at the end.
Yeah.
Yes, it was so slow we almost looked like we were going backwards. I remember that. Absolutely. No, I did a lot of these over a great deal of time. And when they're repeated on television during the day, people watch them during the day, and then if they bump into me later that evening, they'll come up with some comment like, "Hey, they got the stain out of that shirt yet?" And I have no idea what they're talking about at all. And, you made a right mess of that Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And then I really have to ask them. I can watch the programs now going out, and I literally do not remember any of the story at all. Yeah. I can sit and watch it, and when I come on, it's quite a pleasant surprise. They go, "Oh, there's me. I wasn't expecting me to turn up." And then I can watch them. I don't watch them very often, but I can watch them as if I've never seen them before, which is quite a treat.
Yeah, amazing. So at the end, then, what was it like when you were told it was coming to an end?
It was a mixture of emotions. The first one was probably, if not disbelief, we were certainly unsure whether it was true, because we had reports of the programme's death multiple times over the previous 3 or 4 years, and then it never happened. But the ITV, and it's their program. They're a commercial company. They have to do what they think is right, but they wanted rid of the show.
Right.
They wanted rid of the show, and the reason became very clear why they needed Sunday night back. and that was the results show phenomena
The X
from
Factor, I think would have
the
been.
X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, and we could not commercially, we couldn't financially, we couldn't compete with a phone-in.
Yeah.
And if you remember, all those they used to all have phone-ins. And 2008, you remember the big financial crash. Advertising revenue was dropping, and so commercial companies, they had to find a way of making money, which again you understand. And Simon Cowell came along with this. I'm led to believe, with a phenomenal idea. The X Factor, of course, had run before that. It wasn't a new phenomena in 2008, 2009, but the results show became a very, shall we say, profitable sideline. I understand that is one of the reasons why they needed this show gone.
Yeah.
So we were. I don't think we were supported as well as we could have been in those final years. I think that it was maybe a decline which was, if not assisted, it certainly was. There wasn't a great effort made to keep the show going.
So they didn't even consider a different time slot or a different day or anything like that?
Apparently not. I think the ratings were falling, but anyway, I don't want to say too much about that. We weren't as a cast, we weren't entirely happy the way that it went. They also at the end they said that it's just being stopped to let a backlog of episodes go, and that wasn't proved not to be true. We all knew that wasn't true. They said, we're just using up. We're going to pause production for a while we use a backlog of episodes. But I happened to be in Leeds, and they were smashing the setup within a month.
Oh wow!
Because I had a place nearby. So listen, everything has its day.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And I don't blame ITV at all. I thought it was sad the way they let it go without a proper finish.
Yeah.
They're just leaving poor old Derek Folds hanging on a piece of farm machinery without knowing if they're going to survive or not.
Yeah.
So I think we were all very, very, very sad. The other thing about Heartbeat is that we obviously we work together, but we also live together a lot of the time because of we used to live in the village. We used to didn't go home.
Yeah.
So we're very close. It was like we're not unique, but everybody who when a job finishes, if a company closes, that sort of stuff, it's not just losing a livelihood and a job; it's also losing a friendship group.
Yeah.
Which and we relied on each other very very a lot.
Yeah, as you would have spent so much time together.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you miss David? Do you miss playing him?
Yes. Yes and no. People ask me to every now and then to do a bit, and I find that incredibly hard. Just to try to slot back in. I used to be able to slot in and out of him very well, but yes, I do. I have found myself on occasions wondering what he's up to.
Yeah,
which is a very strange phenomenon because it's not me at all that, but I do kind of, especially if I've caught a glimpse of one of the programs on ITV2 or whatever, I do kind of slot back into it as an ongoing story. I still occasionally feel it's carrying on when I'm not there. That they're still living. There's still this village is still carrying on. Like anyway, it's a very strange phenomena in my head.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the film. What's the film? You'll know this one with How Are Things in Glockamora or whatever. What's the thing when there's a village which appears every 100 years?
Oh, I don't know.
I've got you.
You have.
I've got you.
It's not Kylie.
Brigadoon. It's Brigadoon. Brigadoon. It's a village which appeared, and I still get this idea that that Ainsfield is carrying on.
Yeah.
In somewhere else in the world, and every now and then I'd like to tune in and go see how they all are.
Yeah. So, so how important is David to you then? Out of all the characters you've played in your career, I mean, you've played loads.
Obviously, Yes, it's very important. I mean, it's like I've never played anything for that length of time ever, and very few actors ever played anything for that length of time ever. Back in the 80s, I was Peter Barlow, unbelievably, in Coronation Street,
Yes.
which I was Peter Barlow when he was 21. And so I did that, and I thought, that's fine. You know, and I'll go and I'll do some other things. So I went and did a load of theatre. And I thought, Coronation Street, we're back in touch in a few years' time. And I'll come back as the character for Ken's funeral. And here we are. Ken's still there. And they replaced me with some skinny, good-looking bloke called Chris Gaskell. Anyway, but not enough about him. But no, he does a great job. It was just written. So, yeah, but no importance to me at all in as far as a career is concerned. So no, nothing. Just because of the longevity of the character, but also because the popularity and exposure that it offered me. No, nothing quite lives up to David.
No,
in that respect.
Do you still get recognised a lot for him?
In my hometown, everybody is so bored of me. If they do recognise me, the last thing they're going to come across is come and say hello. They go, oh, God, that's that bloke there's that actor bloke again who seems to open all the summer fairs. And if I see him again, I'm going to fall asleep. But it's very strange. Never in London, never down south. Some of the northern towns, occasionally, like Leeds and a lot of the northern towns, I get recognised a lot more. And but never in London. And of course, if I go to Goathland, where we filmed, or Whitby, then a lot of the people are kind of half looking. So yeah, I get recognised there a lot. Yeah. And I think you were there at the car rally this year, and we were Trish Penrose and I were signing autographs, I think, for nearly 3 hours on one of the days.
I think it was more than that, wasn't it?
I don't know. It felt like it was a long time, and we did that for 2 days. There's still a lot of people out there who missed the show and are still very involved in it.
It's really nice. I've got a hypothetical question for you now.
Oh, here we go.
Heartbeat is coming back.
Is it?
Am I
in it?
You were going to be in it. So, assuming that everybody is alive and well, I want you to choose a village constable, a medical character, a sergeant, a rogue, and one additional character to join you. And they can be anyone.
So basically, we're talking about people who had been previously in the show, and I assume they're all alive and well.
Exactly.
Right. So this is awful, because you're asking me to choose my favourites.
Well, I am in a way.
If I had to choose, obviously, because it was so very important to the years, Greengrass's character was probably the one that set up that comedy subplot. I would have to choose him on screen. Right. When on screen, the rest of the time, Gwen, please come back. And Gwen's performance was, but if I have to choose one of them, I'm just going to have to choose Greengrass just because. The sergeant. See, this is hard. I really liked Derek, and I really liked John Deteen and Philip Franks. I think, have I missed anybody else out in the middle? If I wanted to choose one back, I would say it would be John Deteen.
Right.
The village constable, Jason Durr.
Okay.
I thought Jason Durr's performance and everything about him, he was a very, very good actor. Nick Berry had tons of charisma. He was a very, very charismatic man, a proper film star, in as much as he could sit there and do nothing, and just incredibly watchable, like Jeff Hughes, incredibly watchable. But Jason Durr has the edge for me, as a constable. Obviously, as the juniors. We had a lovely young guy called Ryan Early, who was only in it for a year, and then he moved. He went for some reason, and he was a very, very funny and amenable young character.
Yeah, and a doctor.
Ooh. Oh, you see, that's a bit weird now, isn't it? Because you see, now I've said to get Jason Durback. I can't have Neve Cusack
You
because
could,
that's not going to.
yeah, you can mix it up.
Oh no, that was saying that. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. All right, we'll have to say. Now, Claire Calbraith was I loved Claire Calbraith's part. She was the young, dark-haired doctor who appeared in the early noughties, I think. Let's modernise it. Let's go with Claire Calbraith. But I loved and adore Neve.
And then you've got one additional character from across.
Well, it would have to be Bernie.
Yeah, yes.
I just couldn't. And I Savage, it would have to be Bernie. This is ignoring so many characters like Rupert Vansittart, who was played Lord Ashfordley.
Yes.
Again, when he appeared, just wonderful. There were so many of the characters. If I could slightly bend what you're saying here, that maybe my additional characters should be the guest artists, because
all of them,
because the guests. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we had David Essex turned up, and she was a huge David Essex fan when she was a young girl, and that sort of stuff. And so like he turned up, and I have a recollection that this rock star turned up. I have a recollection that he had his mum with him when he turned up for filming, and we all went out for dinner because David Essex was such a huge star. I have a photograph of myself cuddling Lulu. It's just all these characters. I would love to meet them all again. I still brag about having Gary Barlow's mobile number on my phone. Because he gave it to me once, and it was for some pathetic reason. I can't remember. I was going to get something for him. I can't remember what it was, but I had it on my phone for years, and then I lost the phone. Oh. I still say I have his number, but I'm lying now.
Yeah. And there was no signal in Gothland to ring him anyway.
Oh my goodness. The amount of money I spent in that hotel because the mobile phones wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Rather, that you will not know where this is, but there's a bench in the middle of the green, one of the green sections in Gothland, and it sits there, and there's a little bit of signal, which you can get at one point in the village, or there was in those days, and it annoyingly used to run out about 6 feet away from the bench. So if you went out to phone somebody, you would go, "Oh, I've got a signal. Hello. Hang on, I'll just sit on the bench." Gone, and you're there left alone again.
Well, I did one of these podcasts with Lisa Kay when I was in Gothland.
Yes.
And we lost signal halfway through, so I had to type the answers to the questions to her in the end.
What a surprise! Now, Lisa, I think she was a proper Yorkshire woman.
Yes,
I think
she was.
She came from Levisham.
Levisham, that's it.
Just down the road, about 10 miles down the road. She was she was a proper Yorkshire woman, and Stephen Blakely was about 5 miles away from being a Yorkshireman. I think he was in Bolsover in Derby, right. But I think he was very, very close to being a Yorkshireman. But I think Lisa was about the only one.
Yeah, I probably think she was because Levisham's so close.
Yes.
But I've got a couple of fan questions for you.
Okay.
So Derek is asking, did you like the final episode?
Oh goodness, did I like it? No. Okay. it was just no, Derek. It was I had very obviously very painful memories about the final episodes because we were saying goodbye to the village and all the people that we knew there, and you get to know the people who own the locations, like the garage, like Bob at the garage, Mick who owned my farm. Yeah, my kitchen, my farm. Can't remember what it's called now. Brow House Farm. Can't remember. No, not Brow House. No, the other one. The Brow House. I can't remember which one they are now. But there's a Brow House which I think was the exterior. And then there was another.
One was the rear, one was the front as well, wasn't it?
It was the rear, the one that Mick Hackey used to run that, and we used to use the inside of that one as well. We used to use the outhouses. The other one was largely just used for approach shots, and we didn't actually use the house very much. But you get to know these guys, and so and unfortunately, I've been back to the village for funerals for villagers and things like that. People that we got so close to at that time. So yeah, it was really hard. And there's always that thing about saying, "Oh, this is the last time we'll do this, the last time we'll do that," and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I don't have many happy memories of that. As far as the episode is concerned, I seem to remember obviously Derek Folds being skewered by a piece of farm equipment. I don't really have any great recollection. How could you write that episode? I don't know. So the answer is, Derek, not a lot. I don't.
We've got Tom. Who was your favourite actor to work with?
Oh, that's so rude. How could I possibly say? Out of the regular company, I just honestly couldn't say. But I would have to say that I probably enjoyed and found it the easiest person to work with would have been Peter Benson. Okay. We spent way too much time together, and that was always great fun. Yeah. And him whinging about being cold, and him and the rest of it. Yes, I've never seen a man wear so many layers of thermals before going out in the North Yorkshire weather. I can tell you that.
Well, he didn't have much meat on his bones, did he?
He certainly didn't. He didn't.
And Kieran is asking, what is your favourite David storyline?
Now, one of the things about David was that he never, ever got a girlfriend. And but occasionally a girl would come along who would take an interest in him for completely the wrong reasons. Obviously, they were trying to get his house or... Yeah. Getting to fix the car or something like that. I used to quite like exploring that different side of David when somebody found him sort of like attractive. That was hard, but we've already brushed on probably my favourites, and that would be the Enoch episodes. Okay. As far as as far as not really very great storylines, but the Enoch subplots are probably my favourites.
Okay. And now I've got a few questions for you to see how well you know David.
Good luck with this.
We have covered some of them already. So, first question, I've got 6 questions. What was the name of David's mother?
Mum. Are you talking about the actress?
The character. Remember Mum. She was knocked down in that first one, and
she was.
She did have a name. You can't remember?
No.
Florence.
Florence, or as I called her, Mum.
Yes.
No, don't remember that. Do you know the actress's name?
I can't remember.
Now, I think the actress who played it was a film star from previous years, and was phenomenal playing my mum. That first episode, I just adored. I wish I could remember her name. And I think the actress passed away quite soon after, maybe by the mid-90s, I can't remember. But she never came back. And I think they would have done because she was so good. But I can't remember.
Rosalie Crutchley.
That's it. Now then, she was phenomenal, just phenomenal, and again a great actress. No, sorry, Mum. That's the only thing I can remember about that.
And in David's first episode, where did he take an injured badger?
The pub. Where else would David? Was it the pub?
No, it wasn't.
Oh no, the doctors.
The doctors.
The doctors. No, I went charging into the pub looking for the doctor.
That's right.
I remember that best bit of acting advice I was ever offered is that he obviously was incredibly het up and very emotional when he went into the pub, because he didn't go in the pub. was not something he did. And so when I was building myself to go into the pub, and I had tears in my eyes, and I went in, and the cameraman looked around the camera and said, "David, just save it for the close-up, because this is a wide shot. Nobody's going to see the emotion in your eyes here." Yeah. And it was one of my very early scenes that I filmed that. Yes, I went in, found the doctor, and then the doctor came and helped with the badger. I needed a prompt there. I'm doing really badly.
Right, the next one. When you came back into Series 5, what did PC Rowan catch you stealing?
Petrol.
Yes.
Now, the reason I remember this is because Nick is such a gentle man, and his character was never violent or particularly aggressive.
No.
And the producers came down because his wife was dying. I had kept him away from his wife's bedside because of this stupid thing of pinching petrol, which I wasn't doing. I was being bamboozled by that actor who's playing Tyrone in Coronation Street now, Alan Halsall. I think he was the kid. It's all his fault. And Nick had to like rough me up a bit, and the producers came around and said, "No, Nick, you've got to rough him up. You've got to slam him against the wall here." And no, I remember that very well. Excuse me.
Next question. We've covered this already. See what your memory is like. How many episodes did you do?
Well, you said 265.
Oh,
did he say
59?
59. There you go.
Nearly. I think we've covered this one as well. Which song did David sing at Gina and Phil's wedding?
I think it was the Macarena. Oh no, it could have been Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
It was, but the Macarena would have worked just as well. And in one episode, David was locked out of a concert that he wanted to see. Who was performing?
Oh my goodness, is it a real character?
It's a real.
Was it a real singer? Yeah. A real singer. I was locked out. I don't know. Lulu.
Yes.
Was it?
It was.
Who appeared strangely as a character in the show, but not herself.
Yeah,
that's very strange.
Deborah. Yeah. And final question: What did David do with his prize for winning the poetry competition? And that was a really nice moment.
Was it a cash prize?
It was, I think. Oh, was it a meal for two? I think it was.
I think I probably gave it. I think Gina and Phil had just lost their baby or something, and did I give it to them? Did I give it to Bellamy and Gina?
You did, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Well done. So you got 5 out of 7. That's not bad.
Yeah, but you prompted me. I mean, it's like I know that you know me better than I do. So that what have you learned there?
No, just take the 5 out of 7. That's pretty good.
I will do.
Lisa Kay only had 1.
Did she?
So,
well, sucks to be her, eh? Well, there you go.
It's been really, really great talking to you today. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you've enjoyed the trip down memory lane.
Yes, I did. I shall now have to go and watch an episode on ITV3, and I'll cry gentle tears into my cup of tea.
And don't forget, next year is your 30th anniversary.
Of what?
Of your first episode.
I thought that was this year.
93 it went out.
Did it now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you must be right. Yeah. I think maybe it was the episode. Maybe we had an anniversary of us filming. Wow. Yes, that's it. Yeah. That is important then. Yes. Yeah, big day. So now I feel even older than I did when I started this conversation.
Well, I didn't mean to make you feel much older, but sorry about that. But we'll celebrate in that. If you can come to the car rally in July, we'll celebrate.
Of course. Yeah, so I will do my very best to be there. So always a great pleasure.
Brilliant. Oh, thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for listening.
Well, that is all we have time for in this episode and this series of the TV Heartbeat podcast. I'm still Lee Jones and my producer is still Kieran Reid. Don't forget to tell your friends so they can join us in the snug for Series 2 and they can also listen back to Series 1. And don't forget to follow us on all of the socials. We've got Twitter at TV Heartbeat, Instagram tv.heartbeat, Facebook, the Heartbeat Vehicle Owners page, and TikTok, Heartbeat TV. Until next time, goodbye.